News alert, NASA's cutting costs. Astronauts no longer to get oxygen. One of the things that I commonly see when I consult with practices is they want to improve their productivity and they think the best way to do that is to reduce their costs. So one practice I was in, a very well-meaning dental assistant who was the person in charge of ordering supplies, her strategy was, well, I'm going to reduce our supply costs by simply not ordering things that are kind of expensive. Well, the two things that are kind of expensive are bonding agents and impression materials. You can imagine what would happen to a practice's productive capacity if they don't have those two items. So this person, well-meaning, didn't order those things, and when they didn't, she was actually kind of confused, and I was confused with her strategy, right? The strategy really doesn't make sense, but you can see where she got there. So let's think about costs in a new way. Let's think about a cost as being dynamic costs or static costs. Static costs are the costs that are the same no matter how much you produce. Dynamic costs affect directly the productivity capacity of an office, right? So this is fixed costs, variable costs, but a little bit different. So the dynamic costs, you have to be very, very cautious in cutting anything there. If you can negotiate better supply rates, well, that's one way you can reduce the cost. But it's very difficult to affect dynamic costs, and it can have really dramatically negative impact on a practice if you misstep. All right, so one group that I work with, they had a marketing strategy that they were going to take every practice that they acquired, and they were going to arbitrarily change their marketing spend to a fixed percentage. All right, so because it works in some offices, it should work in all their offices. So they arbitrarily set it at 4%, but there were practices that really needed the new patient flow to feed the engine, right? And so when the marketing costs went down, the new patient flows went down. When the new patient flows went down, the productivity went down, and the profitability tanked. Okay, a great example of a dynamic cost that was adjusted for really bad experience. So here's the lesson. Static costs, go ahead and cut them every little bit that you can. Do that first, right? Dynamic costs, leave be unless you see places where there's just super opportunity. Places like waste, eliminating waste, eliminating the number of brands of things. Those two things can reduce expense dramatically. But if you want to improve profitability, it's all about productivity, right? It's much easier to drive up revenue than it is to drive down costs. So if you are struggling, cut static costs, think about being a little more judicious on the dynamic costs, but drive up revenue. And that's the way to get costs under control. So for everybody who's seen the Dr. John Meis Show, I want you to go ahead and put comments and questions, and we'll get to those when we do the mailbox. You can also go to our website and receive a free copy of our Amazon #1 best-selling book, The Ultimate Guide to Doubling and Tripling Your Dental Practice Production. This will give you all the keys that you need to do in order to increase production so that you can increase revenue, and I promise it is so much easier than trying to cut costs. So you can just go to the teamtraininginstitute.com and it'll be very clear there how you can get this book for free. I'll buy the book for you. All you got to do is pay the postage. So good news is that this is very easy to improve revenue, right? The bad news is if we try to reduce costs, it can be very tricky and can be very problematic. So that's it for this episode. I'll see you the next time on the Dr. John Meis Show.